What's up, Cowboys Nation? Oh, hold on. I think we're getting a little bit of echo. If you do hear an echo, let me know. But I'm your host, Jazz Monet, and this is a special episode of Bitches Love Sports dedicated to fans of the Dallas Cowboys. Because although there was a victory on Thursday for week 4 over the New York Giants, just feels like there's a lot of mixed feelings, maybe a lot of pent up feelings, a lot of confusion surrounding how people should feel about the team or certain players of the team or certain aspects of the team. So I just wanted us to have this opportunity to come together, talk about what we've been seeing, talk about what we like, talk about what we don't like, ask questions, get support from one another. Because, I do work, but I do spend a lot of time on Twitter, at least scrolling anyway. And it just seems like there's a lot that people need to get off their chest and a lot that people need to talk about and a lot of questions that people have when it comes to the future of this team and to put it in a nutshell, whether they should be optimistic or pessimistic. Um so yeah, we're going to jump right into it. Basically, we're going to start off with some insights about the team, and then we're going to go into some of the sound that came out today from Mike McCarthy and the coordinators. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to share your thoughts. Like I said, this is a group therapy session. So I want you guys in the comments. I want you guys to tell me what you're thinking, whatever it is, good or bad, we will address it. Now, if it's disrespectful, I'm not going to read it. Like, y'all know how I am. So I do feel like there's a line between criticizing someone's play versus criticizing them as a person. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to tell you what you can or can't type, but I'll tell you what I will and won't share. But yeah, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. And if enough people end up online, I think, and y'all can tell me in the comments if this is something that you want to do. But if enough people join, I'll share the link so that you can request to join me on my stream. You don't have to be on camera. It can just be your voice. I don't have a way to take calls. But if you want to join me on my stream and hide your face, hide your name, and say what you have to say, just to vent, just to get it out, then yeah, if enough people join and that is something that y'all say via comments that you want to do, we can do that as well. I am here for you guys tonight. But I didn't do an intro video or anything. So while we're waiting for people to join in, I am going to start off with some insights from the last game. And these might be statistics that you guys already know. I have not, have I? I don't think I've been live on my own stream since the game happened. So these are all things that I have not talked about as of yet. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go into some of the press conferences. I do think asked a lot of questions that y'all want, or answered a lot of questions that y'all have concerning the offense and the defense. And I say that because not long ago I did a live stream with Lou's Takes, and I didn't get to watch these press conferences before that stream. I watched them afterwards, but some of the questions that y'all had during that stream were actually answered by the coordinators. So I think by the time we get to the end of this whole thing, everyone will feel a lot better. So let's hop into these insights. I'm going to go backwards from, let's see, let's just start with the 24th. All right, so if we go to September 24th, some of the things that have been noted about the Dallas Cowboys so far this season. Um, as of that day, it says the Cowboys have generated the second fewest rushing yards. Oh, wait, that was before the game. Let's start with the game. Cowboys won 6 straight games against Giants. We know that. Okay, here we go. Through 3 weeks, CeeDee Lamb leads all receivers in yards after catch over expected, plus 71 this season. So that's one of the things that I feel like is a little bit significant, because it feels like right now a lot of people are really focused on where the team is falling short. And while it may not be a collective result, there are a few people who are performing above and beyond at least what was expected based on statistics and other equations. Next, So for the game against the Giants, Dak Prescott, it says, was extremely efficient in the quick game. Surprise, surprise, Dak Prescott efficient in the quick game. Okay. So it says Dak Prescott was extremely efficient in the quick game against the Giants, completing 13 to 14 passes under 2.5 seconds for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. It goes on to say Prescott's plus 21.2% completed passes over expected on such passes is his highest rank in it is his highest mark in the game since week 12 of 2022, which was also against the Giants. On early downs, Prescott was 18 of 19 for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns, completing plus 21.7% of passes over expected. It goes on to say Prescott's 70% success rate on early downs is the third highest mark by a quarterback in a game this season. So Dak Prescott being efficient in the quick game is not surprising, hopefully not surprising to anybody. And I think that's why a lot of fans want to see more of that. By the way, and I will check Twitter every now and then, but if you are watching on Twitter and you want to make sure that I see your comments, please hop over to YouTube so that I can be sure to see your comments, because sometimes the ones from Twitter don't come over. All right, so far we've got CeeDee Lamb getting lots of yards after the catch, of course, and Dak Prescott is, as it's described, extremely efficient in the quick game. So neither of those things are surprises. Moving on, there's some insights about Micah Parsons. It says, through the first 3 quarters, Micah Parsons generated just 1 pressure on 13 matchups with left tackle Andrew Thomas. And also, Parsons then generated 1 pressure on 2 fourth-quarter matchups with Thomas before exiting the game due to injury, unfortunately. And I know that's one thing a lot of people want to talk about tonight. Parsons finished the game with 4 total pressures on 30 pass rushes. That's 13.3%, including 2 quick pressures under 2.5 seconds. So the under 2.5 seconds is significant to me because if y'all remember, there was a stat before the game against the Giants saying that he was over a second slower on average in time to pressure than he was last season. So the fact that he had some under 2.5 seconds is actually an improvement just from earlier this season. But that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people say, like, hey, by all means, pay attention to the early season games, but you can't just really use those games to pass a judgment on a team or on a player, because so many things change within 3 to 4 weeks into the season. And finally, one more insight on CeeDee Lamb. It says CeeDee Lamb totaled 7 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets, 53 yards after catch, with all but 1 reception for 4 yards coming in the first half. Lamb currently leads the NFL, the entire league, in yards after estimated. Sorry, they use all these abbreviations and sometimes it's hard to read through. So YACOE, so it's yards after catch over expected. And he currently leads the NFL in that at plus 109. So basically, at some point before the season, a few statisticians got together and was like, okay, this is how much we expect CeeDee Lamb to do in YAC. And at this point, he is averaging over 109 yards over that expectation, which leads the NFL. He also ranks 3rd in total YAC entering the Week 4 Sunday slate. So nothing surprising there, but those are good things about the team that you don't often hear talked about. So to put it in a nutshell, it sounds like offensively, on the offensive side of the ball, CeeDee Lamb is doing really well. Dak Prescott is efficient in the quick game, and everything else went pretty much unmentioned in the insights, which you could take as good or bad. So we're going to go into these press conferences from the coaches and coordinators. Hey, Brandy, how's it going? So, Brandy, I'm not sure if you just joined in, but this is basically a group therapy session tonight because the game happened on Thursday. So a lot of what people have to say about the game itself, that time is kind of coming to an end. However, the fan base as a whole does seem to be a little bit conflicted on a few points, or at least have some lingering concerns. So this is an opportunity for everybody to just get their feelings out. So it looks like you're starting with the run game. mentioning that the run game is concerning. And yes, that is absolutely a concern that a lot of people have. So I believe Mike McCarthy mentioned that a few times during his press conference. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. Hey, Clement, how's it going? um, and Clement, I was just telling Brandy, it looks like a lot of people joined in like the last 30 seconds. So it's a group therapy session. Whatever your grievances, whatever your concerns, whatever your questions are, put them in the chat. We'll bring them up. We'll talk about them together as a group so that hopefully we can go into week 5 as a more collective fan base, as a more well-balanced fan base. And also, if enough people join and y'all mention in the chat that you want to join the stream, even if you don't show your face on camera, let me know. I'll share the link to join the stream and you can hop on and share your thoughts. So, Brandy has mentioned so far running the ball and stopping the run. That's something that's been consistent throughout the season, Brandy. So I'm pretty sure you're not the only fan who has that concern. So let me go ahead and pull up Coach McCarthy's press conference. We're going to skip through it a little bit just because he got asked some of the stuff that he was asked about specific players. The answers were kind of, I don't want to say they weren't helpful, but they were just specific to those players and not answering questions about either unit as a whole. So let me pull this up, and I think we're going to start from about 3 minutes in. Plus, it'll save us a little bit of time. Clement, do you have anything that you need to get off your chest at this point in the season before we go into week 5? Usually you have a lot to say. The fact that you're so quiet is almost scary. All right, let's fast forward to 3 minutes and then we'll get into what Mike McCarthy had to say.
To draw and the significance of these guys and who they are to losing Dak a couple years ago to the thumb and overcoming all that as well.
Yeah, I think it's.
Hold on, let me 1 second. I think my earbud is not connected properly, so I can't hear. Of course, that's the problem. All right, here we go.
We're preparing to play well like it. So.
Like Connor to the ESPN. Are there any parallels to draw when?
Sorry, it's going too fast.
Of the significance of these guys and who they are to losing Dak a couple years ago to the thumb and overcoming all that as well.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think it's obvious. I mean, when you got positions that carry a little more responsibility on your football team. Pass rusher, corner, tackles and quarterbacks and those things because it does adjust the way you have to game plan. That's definitely the reality of it. But once again, this is our game. This is part of the challenges of our league, and it gives others a great opportunity. And it's not just going to be one guy or two guys. We're going to have other guys step up.
What have you liked about Neil?
Okay, so I'm going to pause right there for a second, mainly because he was asked about the injuries on the defensive side, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. And he was asked how it compares, for example, to the situation that the offense dealt with when Dak Prescott was out due to his thumb injury. And one of the things that I kind of feel weird about with this answer is that he's just like, oh, well, guys have to step up and not just one guy, multiple guys. And it almost feels like, and I know he has to be optimistic. He's a head coach, but I just feel like there's no real replacement for Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence. And it's almost like he's trying to convey the idea that, yeah, everything's going to be okay. Next man up. We'll have some people step up and they'll have to fill in and we'll just move forward. And it's kind of like when something is a big deal, but someone tries to convince you that it's not, and you're like, stop trying to get me to calm down. Stop trying to act like nothing's wrong. Like, I know this is not an ideal situation, not even close. How do y'all feel about that? I see Brandy has already mentioned McCarthy has no poker face. Um, what do you mean by that? You think he's more worried than he's letting on with his words? I could see that. But yeah, so that doesn't answer your question about the run game, but I do think that addresses sort of gets to what you were saying about concerns with stopping the run, especially with D-Law and Micah being out. I kind of would, if there was a real answer, I would expect it to be better than this. This sounds like the answer that you give when you don't have a really good answer, but you have to say something and try to be as optimistic as possible, in all honesty.
Dylan's done in the first month of the season.
I really like when Marshawn's just the way he's reacted to everything. Every time we get more responsibility, he just goes about it with the right attitude and great energy. He's a bull and ball full butcher knives type player. We cranked up his.
Okay, if anybody knows what a bowling ball full of butcher knives is, please let me know in the comments, because he lost me with that one. But apparently Marshawn Nealon is a bowling ball full of butcher knives, whatever that means.
His responsibility on special teams, and he's done a good job. So, for a young player that's, has been, you look at our young offensive linemen, they're playing one position, and know clearly who they're playing against this week and so forth. Where Marshawn he's had a little more, diversity to his job responsibility, and I think he's done a hell of a job with it.
Okay, props to Marshawn. I'm going to reserve comment on Marshawn just because he's got a lot on his plate at this point. I don't know if the sound has come out from Micah Parsons yet, but there were some members of the media who were talking to him today, and they asked him about Marshawn, and according to Micah, he says that he told Marshawn Nealon that he's going to have to step up, not just on the field, like in terms of play, but like it's time for him to step up as a leader, which might be a lot to ask for someone new to the team. As optimistic and upbeat as he seems to be, that could be somewhat of a heavy load. So I'm going to reserve comment on Marshawn right now, except to say that I like him as a player and I believe in his ability to get the job done. We're going to fast forward a few minutes to, I didn't take notes on what Mike McCarthy said here, but he says something around this particular minute mark.
I love what Chauncey's been giving us.
Saad is the Athletic. Mike, you've talked a lot about what September football is and all that entails as the calendar flips to October. What do you kind of look for in the second phase, the second month of the season as you progress?
I hope we learn from it, because we need to be better. And I'm talking more in the areas of, fundamentals, techniques, and so forth. But yes, I think, you are who you are. After 4 games, we've done the deep analytical dives, and it's particularly spent a lot of time on the situationals because we've had some out of balance games in our first 4. But I think the biggest thing that stands out is the critical penalties in situations. That's something that we really need to do a better job of. We're always going to be working on our fundamentals.
Okay, I'm going to let him finish, and I'll probably go back a little bit. But he was asked about basically what he's gotten from September football so far. And he said a few things, and he said one of the things that sticks out the most is the critical penalties. So I'm wondering from you guys, do y'all agree with him? Do y'all think that that is the biggest thing that sticks out from the month of September so far is the penalties, especially considering that he's the play caller for the offense? Do you think it's the penalties, or do you think it's something else? Do you think that there's something bigger that maybe he should take away from what we've seen from the team so far this month? No right or wrong answer. Like I said, this is for all of us. So if you agree, feel free to say you agree. But if you don't agree, go ahead and let the group know what you're thinking. Let me go back a few seconds, and then we'll get back into this answer and let him finish.
because we've had some out of balance games in our first four. But I think the biggest thing that stands out is the critical penalties in situations. That's something that we really need to do a better job of. We're always going to be working on our fundamentals and things like that, and want to be better in more areas than others. I mean, I think that's always part of the normal progression of an NFL season. So you're always working at some degrees are higher than others, and that's clearly reflects where we are after 4 weeks. But we got to be better in the areas in the penalty areas, because we've had way too many third down penalties, way too many red zone penalties, and a couple 2-minute penalties, and that obviously affects scoring, and obviously affects the opportunity for the offense to have the ball more, and obviously affects the defense being on the field longer.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he's not wrong about any of that, right? Everything that he said about how penalties affect scoring, time of possession, all that is true. I just don't know if that's the biggest takeaway, in my opinion. That's the only thing. But he's not wrong. So if he thinks that's the biggest takeaway and he feels like that would make the biggest difference, I mean, hey, he could be correct. There are some plays that were erased because of penalties, completely erased, like not even on the stat sheet. So he's definitely got a case to be made. Before we keep going, I want to look at a few of y'all's comments and just see where we are in this conversation. So Willie says, everyone has to step up even more with the injuries of Micah and D-Law. And for God's sake, the offense needs to find a running game. It would be nice to help out Dak a little bit. I think they're getting there. At least statistically, if you look at the numbers, it looks like in the last game, Rico Dowdle was starting to emerge as the running back one. He got the most carries and the most yards by far. And at least from the people I've talked to, and also in my own opinion, just from I'm not usually a proponent of the eye test, but if you do use the eye test, just comparing him to other running backs, it does seem like he's getting the most out of what this run scheme has to offer, if you want to consider it to be offering anything. So I think they're getting there. One thing that we have to remember, and this is not an excuse, this is just context. Last week was a short week. They didn't have a lot of time to put in a lot of new things and to learn new things and to do a lot of things differently. They basically had to do what they could on a few short days. And keep in mind, they also had to travel on top of that. So it's a short week and they had to travel. And so in terms of what they probably could have done differently, that was essentially cut in half compared to a normal week. So I will give them a little bit of grace. Y'all don't have to, but just a little bit of context as we continue to talk about some of these things. Clement says, Mike McCarthy hasn't evolved with today's game at all. He is stuck in his old school West Coast offense. Here's a question. Here's a question for y'all. Is the West Coast offense as a whole outdated, or is it just the way Mike McCarthy does it? And I'm asking this because I've heard a few people say things that suggest that the West Coast offense in and of itself is just, it's old, it's outdated, and no matter who does it, no matter who implements it, it's just not effective anymore. So what's y'all thoughts? I can't talk today. What's y'all thoughts on that? Okay, he's stuck in his old school West Coast offense, no pre-snap motion, which he does talk about in this press conference, sort of, to create matchups in your favor, wide receivers versus linebackers, running backs versus safety, etc. That's fair. That's fair. Brandy says, if we run the ball, it helps the defense out. Valid. We're depending on the passing game, which we can't always do. Let's scroll a little bit. Clement says, before you run the ball, you have to stop killing yourself with penalties, especially pre-snap penalties, holding penalties due to poor footwork by offensive linemen. So, Clement, it sounds like you agree with Mike McCarthy when it comes to the penalties being a pretty significant part of what they need to improve going forward. And Willie says penalties have to stop. They are momentum killers. Okay. So it sounds like y'all are on board with what McCarthy is saying. So we'll fast forward a little bit. Um, we've got one more quote, and then after this one, Mike McCarthy talks about pre-snap motion. So let's start here.
Sports, Mike, how much, I know you had the injuries to Lawrence Parsons, but how much can the improvement shown in the run defense be carried over into a game against Pittsburgh and a run-heavy offense?
So essentially, this question is asking about the fact that in the game versus the Giants, the run defense seemed to improve a little bit. And so this person was asking, okay, if Micah Parsons is not there, how much of that improvement can actually carry over?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's run defense is about the 11. The one thing is, I thought we were clearly cleaner in our fits. Our blocking destruction was better, but we have another level to go. We got to get, we got to get the finish. The pursuit and finish needs to be cleaner. I think we can get more opportunities on the ball, so that's what we're looking to build off of. We understand clearly the job that we did Thursday night against the Giants, but we need to be better, and we will be challenged there continually throughout the season. We understand that, so that's definitely a starting point for us.
Kyle,
So that was another response where he doesn't directly address what the loss of Micah Parsons means. And maybe he shouldn't. Maybe it's one of those things where if you go too deep into detail, it kind of gives too much away in terms of what you're going to do differently. Because I can imagine that it's hard to talk about what the defense is losing by not having Micah Parsons without talking about what you're going to do to replace what you're losing, right? So part of me wants to be understanding, but there's another part of me that wishes for a more thorough answer. All right. We're gonna go for it a few seconds, and this is where he talks about pre-snap motion. So I want y'all to listen to his answer to this question. Listen to the question, listen to the answer, and let me know just what your thoughts are. I'm not gonna lead you at all. Just let me know what your thoughts are when he talks about or when he gives his answer to the question about pre-snap motion.
I'm not OC, never been OC. There's a lot of talk about pre-snap motion and where you guys rank in that. Can you talk about why you're low in that category and that's an important part of your offense?
Yeah, like seeing the reports. We got a great analytics department. I think I've probably seen all the ones you saw and didn't throw out the ones that are good because that's part of the equation too. But no, I think was really kind of part of what I was talking about earlier. You got to look at the situationals, particularly on offense, because some of our formation, I was talking to John Park about this yesterday, some of our formation tendencies, you got to factor in, I think we've been almost 3/4 of 2 minutes. So, that those are skewed a little bit. But yes, as far as the motions, how much motion we want to do, CDs utilization and motion. You also, I don't know, one of the things the analytics also shows is just the yardage that our receivers cover. Our guys are, and that's probably a product of, some of these 2 minute, the extra 2 minute, 2 minute offense that we've been in more than the norm for 4 games. So yeah, I've looked at all those things, clearly aware, the windows and, so I've seen the studies, but also I think our guys do a really good job of taking that data and then making sure all the filters are applied. So our information is accurate. And as Brian and Schottenheimer and I will continue to visit on it, through today, and that's what tonight's for. And then as we start putting that plan together tomorrow, so those things have all been identified. But I think, just like anything, which you do inside the why is a big part of it. So yeah, we're clearly aware of our numbers in those areas.
And as offense,
So what do y'all think about that answer? He was asked why they're so low statistically in terms of pre-snap motion. And he gave a little bit of an answer to that. So one of the things that he mentioned was that they've spent a lot of time in 2-minute offense. Now, personally, I would argue that part of the reason why that's happened is because they needed to do that in order to get some momentum for the offense, which they might not have needed as much if they were using more pre-snap motion and the offense was performing better in the first place. So do y'all have any thoughts on his answer before I finish giving my thoughts? Because I don't want to make it I don't want to make it seem like my response is the right response. I'm really curious as to what y'all think and how y'all feel about it. Okay, I can't tell if this is a response to Mike McCarthy or not, but I'm gonna go ahead. Well, and I'm gonna read these comments too. These are some good ones, guys. But I felt like the response to the question didn't address why there's so little pre-snap motion. He basically said like, "Oh, we've spent several quarters in 2 minute more than we planned, and we also are aware of the numbers. We have great statisticians. We are aware of the numbers, and he didn't really address why it's so low. So I'm not sure if he doesn't know, if he doesn't have an answer. He even mentioned knowing the why, and I'm like, okay, most people are aware of the why when it comes to running pre-snap motion. So that was one of those things that just felt like a really inadequate answer. Clement says it was a terrible answer to this pre-snap motion question. It's imperative that we practice pre-snap motion so that the receivers know what to do and align correctly in the right positions on the field. Agreed. And I mean, there are some times where it does look like they run just enough motion to get that information, to know where people should go, to know what the opposing defense is doing, but not necessarily enough to do what I think a lot of people want to see, which is actually create opportunities for the receivers specifically. And so I think that's the thing that feels inadequate here. It just felt like he kind of was like, oh, well, we're running 2 minute. And it's just like, well, you haven't been running 2 minute for every quarter of every game. Yes, you may have done it more than you expected, but it's not like you didn't have opportunities to do pre-snap motion. It's almost like he tried to use it as an excuse for why they haven't been doing it. And it's like, no, that doesn't really account for what we're seeing in terms of the lack. Willie says, Jazz, to be honest, the offense has to be better. They need to use Turpin more in the offense. You know what? I've heard a few people say that. And I'm not against it, because here's the thing. When he is used, he does make an impact. So my question is, if he's used more, would that like kind of dampen his impact? Kind of like if you do it too much, then it's not as impactful? Or do you think that he would just have just as much impact, but have that impact more often? Or is it something else that you're seeing in his game that makes you feel like he needs to be used more? Because I guess at this point I'm associating Turpin with some of those like bigger plays that are kind of a surprise. And so I just wonder, would he have the same effect if he were used more? DJ, is that pronounced Bruce Wayne? That's creative. DJ Bruce Wayne says Mike McCarthy's play calling is antiquated. I haven't seen you in here before, so welcome. And thanks for chiming in. Let's see. We've got some other comments about the offense. Oh, and the defense. Clement says, right, this week we do play a run-heavy offense in Pittsburgh. Yes, who is running the ball with Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and they have a dual-threat QB. Facts. Who does QB zone read or scrambles when the passing plays aren't there. Becomes an athlete to get hidden yards. Justin Fields is becoming more of a threat than I think people expected him to be. Because when people talked about the Steelers in the preseason and early in the season, there was a lot of talk about the QB battle. And there was a lot of talk about how if you don't have, or if you have two quarterbacks, then you don't have one. And part of the narrative of that was this idea that both he and Russell Wilson were kind of not that great of a choice, that they were both kind of struggling in a way. But now that Justin Fields has been getting these starts, he looks really comfortable, whether he's passing the ball or it's a run play or he's scrambling. He looks surprisingly comfortable in the pocket. And take that with a grain of salt, because although I kind of kept up with what he was doing in Chicago, I didn't watch him a lot in Chicago. So maybe he was more comfortable than highlights and commentary let on. But now that I'm actually trying to watch him more because the Steelers are going to be an opponent, he looks surprisingly comfortable in the pocket, like way more comfortable than what I expected. And their passing game looks a lot more organized. A lot of the things that I heard early in the season suggested that there wasn't much chemistry between him and the receivers, and maybe there wasn't because it was so early and because there was this expectation of Russell Wilson um, being QB1. But I'm seeing comfort there. I'm seeing chemistry there. I'm seeing them be able to work together to find voids in the coverage that they're able to exploit. And yeah, their offense looks a lot scarier than I anticipated that it would. I thought the run game was going to be a problem, kind of like what a lot of y'all are saying in the comments, like, oh, yeah, it's a run heavy offense and Justin Fields, he can run. That part I was ready for. But actually watching him make well designed, well executed plays from the pocket where he looks very comfortable, not even like, oh, I'm scared, I might scramble. Oh no, here's an opportunity. Like, no, like he's back there chilling. Like he feels good behind that O line. Um, it's that dual threat that I'm like, oh man, that might be a lot for the Cowboys to deal with, especially with Micah Parsons and D-Law being out. Now, at least there's this mini bye, and the people who are expected to step up and do a bit more on defense, both in terms of gameplay and in terms of leadership, at least they kind of have a heads up. They have a little bit more time to adjust to that role. There were definitely some people on the field on Thursday who didn't know that they were going to be asked to step up in the way that they were asked to step up. So I think that will make a difference. So let's see. Clement says we aren't using Turpin or Tolbert enough in the offense. Tell me more about that, Clement. How are you feeling? What do you think they should be doing that they're not doing? Willie says, Jazz, if I'm Mike McCarthy, run the ball and don't let TJ Watt or Cam Hayward and Highsmith wreck the offense. That's a great idea. In theory, it is. So DJ Bruce Wayne says Turpin was an MVP of a whole league, albeit lesser talent. I do think that makes a difference, as just based on my experience of watching the USFL and the UFL and the XFL. I do think the league was VMP of makes it. Why can I not talk? MVP of makes a difference. And Clement says, so Brandy said Tomlin is a good coach. Absolutely. And she said that's why. I'm assuming in response to what I was saying about Justin Fields looking so comfortable in the pocket. And Clement says, facts, Mike T is a leader of men as they play tough, hard-nosed physical football for 60 minutes. Yes. And it's not like reckless toughness. It's not like, oh, we're just going to go out here and be crazy and be aggressive. It's like toughness with football IQ. Like, we're going to use our toughness the right way. We're going to be aggressive at the right times. We're going to be physical at the right times. And that's the thing. And which coordinator was it? We're going to get to it. I think it was Zimmer. No. Because they were talking about the O-line. It was Shoddy who actually said something that I think will connect to that in a way that'll make sense. So I think we have one more thing to listen to from Mike McCarthy, and then we're going to get into Schottenheimer sound. And yeah, there's a section where he says something that I feel is more significant than he'll get credit for. But let's finish this up, and then we'll get to that. I want to go forward. Actually, we can just start from here. We'll go from here.
Do you have to guard against trying to overcompensate for your defense, or is that what you have to do?
No, I think it's I think it's who you want to be, and right now we're not playing to the complementary football that we played last year and really the last 2 years. I felt like the complementary football really came into the formula we were starting to hit it in 22 and clearly was evident in 23. And one of the biggest statistics, and I made a point of it again today in a team meeting, is, our number of plays on the field for our defense from 22 to 23 went down. I think it was 9 plays, was it 50, 55? Or six plays a game. So that's a full game. So when you look at your overall stats in a year, if you're playing 6 plays less a game, that's a full game less for your defense on the field. So we're not there. We're back to 21 right now. So as far as what our numbers are for, so that's where, you talk about third down. It's always a two-way street with me. When I see the defenses on the field, as long as they've been, I'm also very cognizant of what the production is on third down on the offense, because our time of possession, we're nowhere even close to where we were last year. That's a big negative for the first 4 games. Those are the things I spend time on, and clearly why are those numbers there, and that's what we're after, because not only do we want to score as many points as we can, but we do not mind going a long way, because there's a benefit to keeping our defense off the field. So much about time of possession is made on running the football. Time of possession is controlling the football. And, you can do that in the passing game too. So that's where we're not, that's where after the first 4 weeks, our complementary football formula needs to be better. So that's what we're focused on.
So I feel like at the end, he kind of got to the point of what he was trying to say. And he talks about the complementary football formula in response to the question about whether or not the offense is having to compensate for the defense. The only thing that I'm concerned about in his response is the fact that he was so macro in his response. And I feel like when we think about the offense compensating for the defense and whether or not that's happening and how to fix it, we want to think more. I feel like that's something that can be adjusted for, like maybe quarter by quarter, game by game. Like that's something that you can make halftime adjustments for. And maybe he is, but I'm just critiquing the answers. I don't know what he plans to call or what he plans to do based on these answers. I'm just talking about the answers and how they make me feel. That answer was like really, really macro. And I understand how what he's saying from a macro perspective relates to what people are seeing game by game. But I just feel like with that question, what we were looking for was an answer about the game by game. What has happened during these first 4 weeks? What does he see in terms of the offense overcompensating for defense? And what can be done about that? We're not really at the point where we're concerned about the end of the season and how many total plays this is happening or this is affecting. A lot of fans and a lot of members in the media are basically looking for answers as to, okay, what's this team going to look like next week? And if things don't start off well next week, how might we expect you to adjust? That's what we're looking for. And he's talking about numbers related to the season as a whole, which might be significant to him. I just don't think it answers what those of us who are listening to this are looking for. I don't know how much that matters to him, though. All right, so I'm going to take this down, read some more of y'all's comments, and then we're going to get into Shoddy's sound, which, like I said, he had some really good stuff. Let's see. Brandy said, it's not the defensive scheme, it's for players. Most of the time they're there to make plays, but don't. Clement, what are you responding to here? Okay, hold on. Let me go back. Clement says, we are so predictable in the offense because we go to CeeDee Lamb or Jake Ferguson most of the time. Yeah. And I think that combined with the lack of pre-snap motion is what makes the offense predictable. It's like you kind of already know who to look for, and then there are aspects of that are easy to identify. As a matter of fact, that comeback against the Ravens, I think that was one of the things that made that so effective. It was the fact that he went to so many different people. I don't remember exactly, but I think during that comeback, like 12 different people caught receptions from Dak Prescott. But that, like, distributing the ball to so many people, I think that's what made that comeback possible. Hold on, I got an alarm for some reason. Let's see. Clement says, when it comes to Brandon Cooks, we need to start playing to his strengths, which is the go route, curls, digs, and corner routes. Too many stop routes and curl routes. I think that applies to everybody, not just Brandon Cooks. I think that applies to everybody. So I am in 100% agreement with that, but I just think that applies to everybody. Um, there have been several snaps where it seems like everybody's running a curl route. Everybody's just running some sort of vertical route. It's kind of weird. Okay, let me do something real quick. I'm going to copy this code. And I'm going to put it here in the comments. This is a link that you can click to where if you want to join the stream, and you don't have to show your face, you don't even have to put your real name. But if you want to hop in the stream and share your comments, you can do that instead of typing them in the chat. And I'll be able to see you before you pop up on screen. So like, it's not like you're going to click the link and you're going to automatically be in the stream. What happens is you click it and then I see you down here at the bottom and then I can add you. And then I think if I press this, it'll like keep it at the top or something. I don't know. I'm still getting used to some aspects of this. All right. We'll take this down. All right. Let me go ahead and pull up Schottenheimer's press conference. We're definitely going to listen to that one. We'll get to Zimmer's time pending. But Schottenheimer said some things that I think will have implications for the game against the Steelers. Okay, we're gonna skip through a little bit, but we're gonna start from the beginning. But there's not gonna be a lot to skip here.
Get back to work. Way to go, Zoom. Yeah.
He doesn't elaborate.
No? Well, good. He's got it figured out. I'm gonna say yes and no the rest of the day today. Yes, no. Shoot, I'll be back at my desk in a few minutes.
Well, good, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah.
Hey, Ron. David Moore, Dallas Morning News. Now that you've had the 4 games to look, and a couple were unusual how they unfolded based on what you did, but what are the 2 things, say, on offense that you want to kind of focus on and where you feel you need to get better as a group in this next phase?
Yeah, I would start with the running game. I think we came out of the New York game feeling, better about the running game. I thought we had some really good combination blocks. That's a good front, obviously, in New York. And I think you saw our combination blocks. We got some displacement. We got movement at the point of attack. That was good. The backs all ran really, really hard. Rico had a couple nice runs. I thought Zeke had his best week of not just playing, but of his preparation. And you saw the discipline in him pressing the hole. So that would be the first one. And then again,
So I'm gonna pause right there just because it's interesting to me that he said Zeke had his best week of preparation. But I feel like in terms of his actual contribution to the run game, and I'm gonna try to pull up the stats real quick just to double check. I feel like it was one of his lowest weeks. So on Thursday, Zeke had 5 carries for 19 yards, which is 3.8 yards per carry. That's solid. But it was just interesting to me that he complimented this as one of Ezekiel Elliott's best weeks. But at least anecdotally, most people were like, he contributed less than he had during any game so far this season. But Shotty seems to be emphasizing I think you said discipline when hitting the hole. I'm going back a few seconds, but maybe that does make a little bit more difference than attempts.
All ran really, really hard. Rico had a couple nice runs. I thought Zeke had his best week of not just playing, but of his preparation. You saw the discipline in him pressing the hole. So that would be the first one. And then again, I think our ability to finish drives in the end zone over the last couple of weeks has been something that is important. We've talked about having to figure out the red zone early in the season, and I think the last couple of weeks were 4 for 5, and in that situation, and that covers up when you're not maybe doing some things well when you can kind of get the ball in the end zone.
Let me go back.
It's important. We've talked about having to figure out the red zone early in the season, and I think the last couple of weeks were 4 for 5, and in that situation, and that covers up when you're not maybe doing some things well when you can kind of get the ball in the end zone.
Okay, so he said they're 4 or 5 in the red zone the last couple weeks, and that it sounds like he's saying that covers up when they're not doing certain things well. And I get that. Like if you go to the red zone and your goal is to get a touchdown and you get a touchdown, it's like you might not focus on what didn't go well. Totally makes sense. We're going to connect this to something else, but I'm going to fast forward about like a minute and then we're going to go back. We're going to listen to what he says and then we're going to go back to talking about the run game in a few minutes.
Todd Archer with ESPN. Can you talk about I know you guys want more run attempts with your backs. How have the guys with the attempts they've had, how have they done? How would you evaluate where you guys are?
Yeah, again, the efficiency's been up and down. Again, we point out to the fact that, again, in the first 3 games, we really didn't have a true full game. I think we came out of New York saying, okay, that's a real game. It was 4 quarters of good football back and forth. It wasn't perfect. What I would say, Todd, is I think we are encouraged by the way that we ran the ball on Thursday night, short week, against what I think is a really good front, not just with Dexter Lawrence, but with Thibodeau and Burns and those guys. And the 2 backers are really good players. So, and I thought the guys had a really good week of practice. We were very intentional with the week, even though we didn't do any banging. Again, we were focused and really emphasizing the fits and the combinations of, again, imagine 2 guys having to work together to move a 340-pound nose tackle like Dexter Lawrence. If you get off on levels, it doesn't work. And so the fits are important. And again, we're young, and that's not an excuse. It's just we're young and we need those reps. And we understand to win in this league and consistently win, you got to have a running game. And so I think we do feel good coming out of that game. And that's the one game that we feel like is the best evaluator, just because it was a true 4-quarter football game.
Okay, I'm going to start with one of the last things he said and work backwards. So he said that he talked about the fact that they're young. Man, there are just so many young people on this team right now that are being expected to step up. And that's not just a physical feat. That is something that requires physical, mental, and emotional capabilities in order to execute. And having all those things on point at the same time and having them balanced, especially when you didn't expect to be taking on that role. Or even more so, maybe not only did you not expect to take on that role, but you were expecting to have some more preparation, some more time to develop before taking that role. I mean, it could have an impact on performance. Once again, this isn't something that I know for a fact, and this isn't me trying to make excuses. This is just me adding a little bit of context. So even if you are pissed about it, even if you hate it, at least we can discuss it from an educated perspective. Now, working backwards from there, one thing I will say is a couple of times so far in the first, where are we, 4 minutes into this press conference, he's talked about the fact that he's encouraged by what he saw in the run game. And I'm glad that he's saying that because it sounds like a lot of fans are not satisfied with the run game. And of course, you shouldn't be. I don't think the run game is complete. I don't think it's at the height of what it can be. But I also felt like there were some good things there, and I kind of felt bad about it. And I don't know if it was because people were so disappointed in how much of a fight that game was, but it really felt like on Twitter, anytime I tried to say anything good, I got pushed back. and some of it was deserved, Stargazer. Some of it was deserved. But some of it, I'm just like, yeah, I do feel, like I said, not that the run game is perfect, not that it is where we want it to be, but I do feel like we saw some things that said, hey, there's something that we can build on here. Hey, there's signs of improvement here. The run game is moving in the right direction. And I'm glad that he's recognizing that, because to me, that says he's going to build off of that and coach them in the right direction, as opposed to pretending like they just haven't made any improvement and aren't doing shit. Let's see. I'm going to read some of y'all's comments and then we'll keep going. Clement says the red zone offense hasn't been good, especially the first 2 weeks. Got to do a better job of executing in the red zone by scoring TDs, not field goal. Facts. That's fair. Brandy said we got Zeke for the red zone, I thought. That's what a lot of people thought. I don't think they ever said that. And I think some of the situations that they ended up facing just caused them to have to go a different direction. Brandy says, why haven't we used Flournoy? I don't have an exact answer. I know usually whenever they're asked about not using someone who a lot of people think is capable of going out there and performing, usually it has something to do with some aspect of meshing well with the offense, of something that they still need to figure out or get right or get nailed down, and how someone else is just a better fit because they are already better acquainted with whatever that thing happens to be. I don't recall hearing, especially recently, any actual answer as to why they haven't used Flournoy. So that's just more of like the general answers that I've been hearing. All right, let's keep going.
John Machota with The Athletic. Through 4 games, it looked like that last one was Dak's last game. But just where do you see Dak after 4 games?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Love what he did spreading the ball around. I love the completion percentage. I think he's finding his rhythm. I think the big thing we've always talked about was getting CD back and what that looks like. I think it was cool to see them connect on some plays. I thought the long touchdown was really a cool play because I'm sure he told you guys it happened faster than you normally think it's going to happen on that play. And CD kind of beat Banks. Banks kind of played him really aggressive, and CD beat him pretty clean. And Dak, sensed it, saw it because he moved the safety. But the throw was the thing that I thought was so beautiful because he got it up and down in a hurry before the safety could get over there. So I think that's all part of it. Again, but that's what we expect from Dak. It's that 70% completion percentage, spread the ball around, get everybody involved. But again, I will say I think he saw the game really, really well. Like I know when he comes over on the sidelines when we talk, it was one of those games that he just was on it and he knew, hey, this is what happened here. I saw that. I saw it the same way. And usually that's a good thing for us.
And then when you're on the sideline of that particular play and you see that CD is probably one of the only times he's going to get single coverage, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, you have a really good idea the ball's probably going over there, number one. But again, it was just cool because it happened right on our sideline. When you give him space, and he has the ball in space like he does, he's an unbelievable runner. I mean, you saw it on one of the toss schemes we gave him early in the game. We flipped him the ball, and just him with the ball is pretty special. But I thought CD played really physical. And I think, teams that want to try to play physical and put hands on him, again, that was one of the cooler reps for him where he kind of pulled through a strong physical corner like Banks. And for him to finish that was not surprising, but had a pretty good idea the ball was going to go over there.
I agree. I do agree CD played physical, and I also like the idea of him getting a few more carries in a few different situations. I think he's done well with the ones that he's had so far this season. Now, let me go back and read your comment about I want to see Dalvin Cook's out there. Okay. So Dalvin Cook, a lot of people, he's another one a lot of people have been asking for. I'm going to say this regarding him. I feel like because of the confusion with the run game, and by confusion, I mean running back by committee, and the fact that they haven't seemed to quite nail down a system for who's being used when and how often, so on and so forth. I just feel like adding a whole new person into that is just going to lead to more chaos. I think we might not see Dalvin Cook until they get a few more answers about the run game, until they kind of decide a little bit better who's doing what and how they want to use certain people. So until they're like, okay, we're definitely not going to use this person in XYZ situation. And so that means they are much less useful than we thought. We're not going to see him. And I get it. I know a lot of people just want to see what he can do and see if he can provide answers for the run game that a lot of people are looking for. It just feels like it would be adding more chaos. So I just don't see it happening. Not saying that it can't happen soon, because they could get the answers that they're looking for soon. But I just feel like that's what will have to happen before he gets out there, is they're going to want to answer those questions first.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. Guyton's got quite a few penalties. Is that more about him being a rookie, or is it something else going on?
This is a really
I
good
think,
question about Guyton.
He's doing some really good things, Calvin. He really is. Again, he's playing left tackle in the NFL. He's young. What we're really focusing on with him this week, and we've talked about it, and not just to him, all the young players, there's a fundamental emphasis that has to happen. I mean, he is so talented and he is so athletic, but he does get off balance at times. He oversets at times. And so for him, a young player that missed a lot of training camp, it's really that intentionality. We talked to the guys today about, when you go out to practice, you can't just go out there and without having a focus or an intentionality of, hey, I want to improve this. So like for Tyler, it's his feet and his hand usage. And again, not just Tyler, but the penalties that we've had, most of them I would say are penalties. If the hand gets outside and you're grabbing a guy's jersey, I mean, they're going to call that. And so, I don't think that looking back at them, most of them I thought were legitimate calls, but how do you clean those up? It's got nothing to do with talent. It's got to do with his fundamentals and the intentionality of practice. I think he's got to understand that, shoot, you get a chance to go against good players in practice one-on-one and maximize those.
Okay, so he said a few good things about Tyler Guyton right there. So he was asked about Tyler Guyton's penalty and kind of gave an evaluation of Tyler Guyton as a player. So number one, I forgot that Tyler Guyton missed part of training camp with an injury. So I'm really glad that he mentioned that. Once again, not an excuse, just context. But I'm also glad that he acknowledged that Tyler Guyton has been doing some good things, because he honestly has. And I think it's one of those situations where the good that he does doesn't get acknowledged as much, because when he and this can go for damn near any O lineman. If you're doing your job and you're not doing anything crazy, like really putting dudes in the ground, if you're just simply doing your job, it's not going to be noticed as much unless people are specifically watching the O-line. But just like the general observer, the typical fan won't notice, because that's what they expect. They expect there to be a pocket. They expect the play to go off. And so it's one of those things like, okay, you're doing your job, nobody notices. But when you're not doing your job and the quarterback gets pressured or the quarterback gets sacked or hit, people notice a lot more. Or if you commit a penalty and you cause a play to be canceled out, people are going to notice that. They're going to notice when the team is negatively impacted. They're going to notice when something doesn't go the way that they expect it to go. And so for Tyler Guyton, I do think that's a big part of the reason why a lot of the bad that he does stands out way more than a lot of the good that he does. And something else that I was thinking about today is the fact that coming into the season, and, just from when he was asked questions after he was drafted, he talked about the fact that he played right tackle in college, but he kind of made it sound like what he did in college would be transferable, because when he was in college, the right side was the quarterback's blind side. And I'm sure there is some truth to that. But there's also something to be said for changing the whole different direction and still having to do your job. So while you may be used to what someone might try to do from the quarterback's blind side, you still have to get used to the movement and the biomechanics of what you're doing now. And then there's also the fact that, and I say this all the time about college players, the defenses that you'll see in the NFL are so far above and beyond any defense that you'll face in college. So even if he did play left tackle in college and he did do a bang up job of it, there would still be somewhat of a learning curve. But overall, and he's going to talk about Tyler Guyton again later, but overall, I just want to emphasize that yes, Tyler Guyton does need work. I'm not denying that. And I know people are frustrated by the penalties. And Shadi said that, I don't remember his exact words, but he said something insinuating that he doesn't necessarily agree with all the calls. But I think one of the reasons why the calls is happening has to do with something that he's going to mention later. But Tyler Guyton is doing a lot of good. It just so happens that he also needs a lot of work. Two things can be true.
The Athletic, Brian. Mike was talking about how time of possession is something that he's been looking at, and you guys want more third down conversions and stuff. How do you go about that in terms of, is there an adjustment on a play calling standpoint, or is it simply execution that needs to happen better?
Yeah, I think when we look at it, third down in the last game was something that got us. It got us a little bit in the first game, so that's a huge benefit to it. But then you have to dig deeper and say why. What's going on third down? I think we were 0 for 3, I think, on 3rd and 11 plus against the Giants. Well, how do you get into 3rd and 11 plus? It's not that you just lose yards. There's penalties. There's things that we just talked about that put you in those situations. So when people talk third down, what they really need to talk a little bit more about is how you got to those third down D&Ds. Because if you're third down and 6 or less in this league, you're going to be pretty good. I think on average, you guys can check it, but 3rd and 11 plus in this league, I think the best in the league each year is going to be somewhere in the low 20s. Like, it's just, they're hard to convert for different reasons. You get all out blitzes, or you get people that play prevent, and they make you throw the ball underneath. So I would say I felt like we've played behind.
I thought that was an interesting call out because he was asked about basically why they aren't converting third downs. And he's, in so many words, connecting it back to what Mike McCarthy was saying about penalties. Basically saying, like, you have to look at the situations that these third downs were occurring in. So it's like, is it that we can't convert third downs, or is it that penalties became an issue and put us in so many third and longs that our conversion rate is lower? I really like the fact that he added context to that.
Behind the sticks a little bit at times. What's that mean? It means we've put ourselves in longer D&Ds on third down, or we haven't won first down to get us into second down and manageable. And all those things attribute to not having the opportunities to go and sustain drives. And, I felt in this last game, after the defense had a couple really long drives, that we had to go out and do our part, and we didn't do that good enough, because it's truly a complimentary thing where you want to go out, and if they have to play 13 or 14 plays of a drive, hey, we got to go string a drive together so they get what? They get a little bit of a break, and I thought we were inconsistent at doing that last game.
Your offensive line in general is pretty young. How do you see Zach Martin in terms of the way that he still, at this point in his career, comes in, the professionalism, and how he carries himself for all those other young guys, not just the rookies, but even the other young guys too?
Yeah, he's a stud. The guy is just, the ultimate competitor on our veteran side, and then a lot of room for improvement.
He's basically complimenting Zach Martin and Terrence Steele with this answer.
From a fundamental, potential, the Jets, it's just growing pains, and it's a hard position to play, and you're going to get their best every time. And so, we make a bunch of self-scout tapes that our guys try to find time to watch, where you literally can go and watch your and rush against you. And
a few seconds.
The cool thing with Tyler is, he's not going to blink. People saying this guy's a bust and he can't play, and he's one of the best to ever do it. And then, Guyton's going to be fine. When I was with.
So this was interesting, and I'm not sure if he did this on purpose or if this was like him misinterpreting the question, but the question was, your offense is mostly young. Talk about Zach Martin's professionalism, even though essentially he's the oldest guy on this young offensive line. So he starts talking about Zach Martin, compliments him, and then he starts talking about Terrence Steele, another veteran on the line, compliments him. But then he goes into Guyton. And even though Guyton wasn't necessarily who this person was asking about, he does mention some interesting things about Guyton that I feel are significant. So it almost sounds like he's trying to defend Tyler Guyton. And so I want y'all to listen to this, and y'all let me know how y'all feel about this defense of Tyler Guyton in the comments as you're listening to it. And I'm going to let you know what I think as soon as he's done.
Potentially one of the best to ever do it. I mean, and then, Guyton's going to be fine. I mean, when I was with the Jets, we drafted DeBrickshaw Ferguson, I think 4th overall. And for the first year, I mean, it was just growing pains and people saying this guy's a bust and he can't play and this and that. And no one's saying that about Tyler, but like, it's a hard position to play.
He said no one's saying that about Tyler. No one's called him a bust, but I have seen, unfortunately, people say that other thing, but we're going to keep going.
And you're going to get their best every time. And sometimes they actually fight to get over there and rush against you. And the cool thing with Tyler is, he's not going to blink. I mean, he knows he's talented. He knows there's things he can clean up. We actually, we make a bunch of self-scout tapes that our guys try to find time to watch, where you literally can go and watch your set. So you're watching, imagine if you're Tyler Guyton, you're watching all of your sets. So you're seeing the same thing that the defensive guys are seeing. And it's amazing when you ask these guys to give you a report, they see it. They don't always see it during the course of a game, and that's why we're on the sidelines making adjustments. But they get a chance when they study those to see some of the things that they're doing. And, oh, shoot, I see why these guys are attacking me this way.
So that bit about the self-scout tapes, that was the part that I felt like connected to what we were saying earlier about the Steelers and also about the penalties. And here's why. So he essentially said they have these self-scout tapes where they can look at them and see what the opposing defense is seeing and why they're attacking them a certain way. So that I was thinking about that when we were talking about what might happen with the Steelers, mainly because what he just described is what I was afraid, or I should say what I am afraid might happen with the Steelers, with it being that what Tyler Guyton is working on, it's like the same thing every game. It's not like he has one game where this one thing is an issue and then all of a sudden something else is an issue. You can see that he's still working on the same things. And in his defense, I will say this, from watching him and from being a person who has had to work with several different types of athletes on several things, what he's trying to fix is not the simplest thing to fix. It's something that he can improve over the course of the season, but the fact that he hasn't fixed it, from one week to another, honestly doesn't surprise me. And it doesn't concern me for him. I believe he'll get it done, but how it will ultimately impact the offense is what is the concern. And I think that's what a lot of people's concern is. And a lot of that has to do with what he just said and with what he said earlier about the penalties, because what he just said is they look at the self-scout tapes and then they're able to, hold on, let me full screen myself since I'm talking for a while. So what he just said is they look at the self-scout tapes and then they're able to see what the defense is seeing. And so they can understand better why a person is attacking them the way that they are. And that is something that if you watch Tyler Guyton and you understand the biomechanics of how he's losing balances and ends up tabletop. I forgot the terminology that Shadi just used, but if you actually watch the film, you know what I'm talking about. And so if I'm a defender and I have to go up against him, yeah, just from looking at that, there are certain things that I will do that I know will get him off balance. There are certain things that I will do that I know will beat him because I've seen what works. I've seen how he tends to react to certain motions. And I'm like, oh, I can use this, right? But the same way I can use it to beat him or to get him off balance, I might also be able to use it to bait him into penalties. And I think that's why Schottenheimer said what he said about not agreeing with certain calls, because he probably looks at some of those situations and sees that Guyton is being baited into penalties. Now, whether you still think those are valid penalties or not, that I know we don't want to think of it as an opinionated situation, but it is kind of an opinionated situation because yes, things are written a certain way in the rule book, but it's like they're written that way so that offensive linemen don't just completely manhandle and abuse the defenders. But when you see a situation where an offensive lineman is clearly being baited, it does, I think, if you're looking at it that way, it does kind of beg the question like, okay, should he have been called on that? Or like, so was he actually holding that guy? Or did that guy put himself in a position to make himself look like he was being held? Things like that. But regardless, I do think the self-scouting that Shadi just mentioned will help. It's essential, as a matter of fact. Just going back to my experience working with athletes, there are so many people who might be otherwise really good at a sport, but they really don't realize that what they think they're doing is not what they're actually doing. And sometimes they don't see it until you show them. And sometimes you do have to show them from multiple angles. And sometimes you literally do have to break down, like, hey, when you do this, somebody who's facing you, they're going to respond this way. And that's why it's urgent that you fix it, not just for you, but to take away a weapon that they have. But let's keep going. I want to listen to more of what Shadi has to say. Oh, let me pull him back up on the screen.
Nick Harris, Forward Star Telegram. I know overall, when you look at the second halves of games, offensive reps have just been down with the way the games have gone. But when you look at CD's case specifically, just 3 receptions for 16 yards in second halves of games this year. What's the biggest attribution for that?
Again, you got to look at each game's a little different, Nick. I think, there's not one thing that I would point to. They certainly are going to pay attention to him. I know one of the last third downs in the game against the Giants, they ran and they doubled him. That's going to happen. CD's good enough to beat doubles. We know that. But there's a couple of times that Dak got moved off the spot and had to kind of, go elsewhere with the ball. So it's different things. But, as you know, CD's, unbelievable player. We're going to get him the ball. When you get him the ball early in games, you're going to try to get him the ball late in games. And sometimes it doesn't work out. But he's a guy that, can help us put games away. I really felt like we should have been able to stay on the field, not have the defense go back out there against the Giants. That's what our job is in 4 minutes, and unfortunately, we weren't able to do that.
You mentioned his physicality on that touchdown play with him against Banks. That added weight that he added over the offseason, how have you seen that translate?
Yeah, he's playing more physical, I would say, but just the strength to pull through that. I mean, it was a quick jam. The guy kind of tried to get him with his outside arm, and he just the strength to pull himself through. And what happens is, the corners tend to panic because, they feel it and they know they're using it for their advantage. Why do you quick jam to try to catch a guy by surprise? But I think that strength and power to pull through and create the separation. And really the best thing he did was he stacked the guy. So like if he would have just stayed outside, then the guy might have been able to come back and knock it down with his inside arm. But if you watch him, he pulls himself through and then he knows to, again, lean and get in front of him, which is why the throw was perfect because of the timing of it. So I'd say it's definitely helping. I think he's playing more physical overall in these first 4 games.
So that last question was about the weight that CD gained in the offseason, and Shadi took a lot of time to talk about what CD Lamb is doing physically, and at the end seemed to agree, yes, the extra weight helped. So Miss Felony Strutter, I don't think I've seen you in here before either, so welcome. She says, he is correct. We have to let him grow. Agreed. I find it interesting that from Mozzie to Coach here, they are clearly stating that they have heard the noise. Oh, absolutely. I think most players hear the noise. I think sometimes when they say they don't hear it, it's to avoid talking about it, in which case I don't blame them, because if you're already hearing the noise and you don't like it, the last thing you want to do is stand there in front of mics and cameras and phones and talk about it. Like, why would you? Like, if someone were to come on here and critique my show, especially if it's things that I already know, things that I know I'm working on, but they're going to take time because of like finances or access or whatever. And y'all were to be like, hey, did you hear so-and-so said such and such? I'll probably be like, I don't pay attention to what people say, but I hear it. I just don't want to, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I spend enough time thinking about it. I don't also want to talk about it and get quizzed on it and interrogated about it. She adds, do people listen? When he was drafted, we knew that he was making a switch right to left. Yeah, I just talked about that. That is something that takes time. Yes, it absolutely does. So what I said a few minutes ago, and I don't know if you were in here a few minutes ago, but we knew he was making the switch right to left, but a lot of people rationalize that by saying, well, when he was on the right, he was still on the quarterback's blind side. And now he's on the left, which is the quarterback's blind side. So they try to rationalize that to make it sound like, yeah, he's basically doing the same thing. No, he's not doing the same thing. He's still doing the opposite thing. And finally, one thing, we have to run the ball much more. Agreed. And that was something that he talked about at the beginning of this press conference. Was a lot of people have been talking about running the ball better, but they do need to run the ball more overall. They did better against the Giants, but before that, just run attempts in general were lacking. That would help our entire line. In the second half versus Cleveland, we could have worked on the run game. Nope, McCarthy just wants to pass. I would have to go back and look at that game again to remember if that's a good idea. Just going based off memory, that sounds like something that could have happened, but I don't remember. But yeah, that's a criticism of McCarthy right now, is that he just wants to pass. But that's been a criticism of his for a long time. And if y'all are watching on YouTube, Clement wants y'all to like the video, so please like the video. And if you're not watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, come over to YouTube and like the video. And if you are staying over on Twitter, please like the video. Just like the video. All right, it's got a few more minutes of Shotty. He's saying some good stuff here.
Joe Hoyt, All City Dallas. 2 of the 3 holdings Tyler Guyton had came on Kayvon Thibodeau.
Asking about Tyler
I
again.
know NFL rules allow a certain level of holding. It's kind of a gray area with rib moves. How fine of a line is that?
So that laugh to me suggests that Shotty feels like some of those holds were a gray area. And I don't know if the video made it out, but there were reports of Tyler Guyton after the game saying something about the refs that he felt away. And I don't know what the actual quote was, but whatever Shotty's laughing about, it's probably why. Only Tyler was upset about it, and Shotty has found enough space between the game and now to laugh about it.
For an offensive lineman to accurately do that when someone throws a rip move?
Yeah, again, I think what I would say is, we never want to put in the officials' hands. There is a technique of how you,
That's fair.
if you set out, you kind of get beat inside, how you replace your feet. And that's a big part of it. And the great thing with Tyler is he's got the length to do it. And so a lot of it is using your length, those, 35, 34, 36 arms that he's got to kind of, wash the guy down. Where he's missed some with his hands. And so it's more of just training the hands and the consistency of the hands and using the hands and things like that. But again, if you get your hands on the inside and the guy kind of starts to tug or pull, since they've moved the official back, the umpire, but you got eyes everywhere in the backfield. And so those guys have to play cleaner with better hands.
Yeah. How much of an emphasis then, if it's the same thing happened twice, how much of an emphasis?
Yeah. Big time, because we know what they're studying that and they're saying, okay, hey, does this guy struggle versus the inside move? We have to correct that, because if you don't, guess what? It's going to show up the next week. The cool thing about this league is there's so much video. Everything is cut up. And now with PFF, you can pull up all these different things. And so that's why I think, again, I'm going to mention the self-scout tapes again. These guys, they have to look at those things. They have to see what their opponents are studying. It's not enough to just study Thibodeau. What is Thibodeau looking at against you? This week, Terrence Steele, what's, Watt looking at with you? It's the corners are no different. It's not just the skill guys that have to watch tape of themselves and the opponent. It's really everybody.
So what he's saying, he's not wrong. So he brought up the self-scouts again because that particular journalist, and I didn't catch the name at the beginning, but that particular journalist mentioned, he was talking about the penalties, and Shotty gave him reasoning for that. And he's like, yeah, but it was the same thing multiple times. And Shotty's basically saying yes, that's because they're studying him. And so what I'm really hoping is that with this mini buy and with him having, and by him I mean Tyler Guyton, with him having more time to do some of the self scouting that Shadi is talking about, that he can actually eliminate some of the issues and some of the tendencies that opposing defenses are using against him. I'm gonna give you an example from when I coached roller derby. It's like we would watch film and I would show my skaters, okay, this is what's happening, and I would show them each time it happened. Like every time they do this, you're doing that, and now they expect it. Because like the thing with roller derby is like we would go to tournaments, and sometimes you'd play 4 or 5 games in a weekend. So it wasn't even just, oh, let me watch tape on you and hope you do the same thing next week. It's like the person that you are going to play in the next round, they literally be sitting there watching you, watching everything you did, taking notes, so that when they played you later that day or the next day, they're like, oh, I know this person does XYZ. I just saw them do it, right? So what he's essentially saying is that Tyler needs to understand those things about himself so that he can fix it. And sometimes that's even something that you can work on by yourself. Because I would literally take these skaters and I would show them what the issue was. And I would show them, okay, you have a tendency to move this way. Instead, you need to practice moving this way. And sometimes, I'm not saying this will definitely fix it with Tyler. I'm just giving y'all an example. But sometimes just them having that mental image in their mind and being able to practice a different movement and a different pattern of movement was able to help them out a little bit, not 100%, but enough to make a dent in the issues that they were having. So if you think about it, if a player is getting 2 to 4 penalties in a game because of something, and you cut that in half, and you think about the yards that an offense loses because of penalties, not just because of the yards that are penalized, the 10, 15 yards, but it's like if there's an 8-yard run that's called back because of holding, and then you have penalty yardage on top of that, that's even more yardage that you're losing, right? So yes, even being able to mitigate something like that by 50% could be significant enough to make a difference in a whole drive, you know? So I really like what Shadi is saying here about the self-scouting. I hope it's something that he's emphasizing and something that the guys are taking seriously, because it can really, really make a huge difference. Like the sooner you realize those tendencies that they're taking advantage of, the sooner you can fix it. And even if you don't fix it 100% the first week you work on it, every week it gets better, and every week that's an improvement for the offense. We're going to listen to this last minute of Shadi. Then I'll take him off the screen and we'll read some of y'all's final comments and we'll get out of here because I am both tired and hungry.
Babe Loffberg, 105.3 The Fan. Hunter Lipke appears to be a guy, whatever you give him, he does it pretty well, and you guys are kind of giving him a fourth down run. But did I see an option route by Hunter on the play?
I mean, you're gonna ask me to just. I mean, what would Zim say? Maybe. No, yeah. I mean, yes. We have a ton of confidence in Hunter. We've put some of the third down stuff in there with him. We ended up going fast on the one run that he got. But yeah, I mean, this guy is just a confident football player. He can do so many cool things. Again, and it's what you saw, honestly, it's what you saw of him coming out of college. You saw him play one back by himself. You saw him play tight end. You saw him play fullback. You saw him play special teams. And I think that was the most plays he's played this year. But Dak has gone to him in some tough third down situations, some really tough window throws, some of those tight windows. And, Hunter has made a ton of plays. The boot to the left the first week, was unbelievable against the Ravens. And then there was a third down and mid-range third down where he stuck it on him. He actually took a hit. Dak took a hit. I can't remember Burns or one of them got him, but stuck it into a tight window. So Hunter's a guy that we just see continue to ascend. And there's nothing that really we don't feel that there's really a lot that he can't do. And we're still scratching the surface of how he's going to help us win a lot of games.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So that's pretty much that. I agree with everything he said about Hunter. I really like what I've seen from Lipke so far this season. And just a little bit of a side note, Hunter Lipke's ascendance to me has been a reminder of why listening to national media is not always the best thing, because for like 2 weeks in a row, they've been like, who is this guy? And they don't know how to pronounce his name. And I'm like, if you can't even identify one of the Cowboys draft picks who's been on the ascent for a while now and is just getting to the point where that ascension is putting him in the spotlight, then like, what are you really watching? I don't trust you to talk about this team. Go away. So let's see. Miss Felony Strutter says, why is this? Come back. Sorry, my scrolling is getting stuck. Oh, that's the comment about Micah and the no call. Did you ever watch the 1970s roller derby videos when they beat the hell out of each other? I've seen clips of it, but modern roller derby is very different. So I didn't invest a lot of time in the old school derby. Ignacio Flores, welcome. Says this team will either be coached up, be more scheme ready, more accountable as players, and rise, or this Jerry yacht will sink fast to the bottom. Period. New voice and new coaches for 2025. Quite possibly. Miss Felony Strutter says, my first live show. Hello from Filthy. Oh man, how is it up there? The Eagles fans are going through it right now. And Ignacio says, Jazz, you are outstanding with football knowledge. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying. So, okay, we're going to stop there. I'm not going to go over Zimmer sound because, like I said, I'm both tired and hungry. But I really do hope that everything that Shadi said, because he spent a good portion of that press conference talking about Tyler Guyton. And I felt like everything that he said was valuable in terms of adding context to where Tyler Guyton is in his performance and the direction of his development. And to me, that's important because a lot of people are talking about Tyler Guyton. And a lot of people have stuff to say about areas in which they feel like he's lacking. A lot of people felt a way about the penalties this last game. And I get it. We don't want to see things hurt the offense in that way. However, I'm just one of those people, and I'll keep saying this. I feel like if we're going to talk about these guys, if we're going to talk about the Cowboys, we should at least talk about them from an educated perspective. And I know some people might feel like, oh, it's just content. It doesn't matter. It's not like I'm out there calling plays, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, if the things we said as members of the media and as content creators didn't matter, this industry would not have existed for so long. It matters. It makes a difference on some level. And if you don't feel like it matters, then what the hell are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? So if you're doing this on a regular basis, on some level, you have to know that it matters. And if you know that it matters, I feel like for any of us who do believe that it matters and recognize that it matters, we have a responsibility to speak from an educated perspective. And I'm a Tyler Guyton fan, right? One thing I was telling Lou earlier when I was on his show was, or was it Lou I was talking to? I don't know. I was telling somebody this earlier, but I was pointing out the fact that I'm critical of Tyler Guyton sometimes because I watch him. If I thought he was trash, I wouldn't watch him. I would just want him to be replaced or benched or cut. And I wouldn't waste my time watching somebody who I thought was trash because that's not fun to me. But I watch him because I like him as a player, because I like him as a person, and I believe that he will develop. And I think he's going to grow. And I like watching that process. So yes, I'm critical sometimes, but that's not like a I hate Tyler Guyton thing. That's a like, okay, this is where we are in the evolution of someone who I think is going to be a great player eventually. And I don't know how long that'll take. He might do it quicker than expected. But I just say that to point out the difference between tearing somebody down and being like, this person sucks. It was a mistake to draft him, whatever, versus saying, hey, here's an issue that this person is having, and it takes more than a week to fix this issue. And here's how it might impact the offense. Here's what it might make defenders do against them. Because everything Shotty said about how they're going to watch him and use what he's doing against him, I knew that from preseason. I was watching what he was doing and I was like, oh, that's going to be a problem in the regular season. There are defenders who are going to see that and be like, oh, yeah, I know how to get him easily. I know how to get him stuck. I know how to get him off balance. I know how to juke him. Like, yeah, not a problem. So Ignatius says Guyton and BB will anchor our own line for years to come. I believe it. I think that's very possible. Felony Strutter adds, with all the Cowboys media from .com podcast, Fisher Vach, no Cowboys fans should watch national media. I'm gonna tell you what. So I watch national media for two reasons. One is to kind of somewhat keep up with the storylines of other teams and other sports and other things that are going on. Because they're not completely inaccurate. And I do usually end up Googling, like if I hear something interesting, I will Google it and research it for myself. But it just kind of helps me keep certain things on my radar. And two, I do like to know what the narrative is, even if I don't agree with it, even if I think they're off base, even if they say things that are like outright wrong, for whatever reason, and not everybody agrees, and it's not for everybody. Like some people, it like literally infuriates them to listen to national media, but I just like to know what the narrative is, and so I'll watch it sometimes just to see what are people saying and what's going on. Clement says, didn't learn much from McCarthy live press conference at all. Schottenheimer, on the other hand, was direct, informal, and straight to the point. That's what I want to hear. Yeah, Clement. So I'm actually thinking what I might do in the future is just like skip Mike McCarthy's unless he says something really significant and just do Shotty and Zimmer. Because Shotty, he actually gives info and insight that seems useful when it comes to understanding the team. So yeah. So Miss Felony Strutter says S asshole Smith. I think I know who she's referring to. So stick to Diddy News. Don't get me started on Diddy News. So yeah, I have a lot more film to watch. This is gonna be a fun week because I don't normally watch the Steelers. So it's gonna be a real test to see how far my film watching skills have come and what I'm able to pull from just watching the footage of the Steelers, especially with them having a whole new quarterback. It's not like I can pull from like stats and tendencies from last season. I'm like, yeah, they're different now. So it's going to be a real test to see what I learned from watching that. And how I can kind of pair that with what I see in watching the Cowboys. So this is going to be a fun week for me to measure my own growth. Do a little bit of, can I call it self-scouting? So yeah, a little bit of my own self-scouting, just to see where I am in terms of this analysis part. I will tell y'all one thing. So here's my fangirl moment for the night. So on NFL Pro, there's NFL Plus, and then there's also NFL Pro. There's two different things, right? But on NFL Pro, if you go to the film room, instead of just having like the straight all 22 that you watch all the way through, they have it broken down play by play. And I tell you what, if you want to have a good time, you go in there and you look for the plays when the Cowboys are on defense, and any play that ends with D. overshown in parentheses. Oh my God. Those are the most, that shit is better than a double shot of espresso in the morning. I love watching DeMarvion Overshown. He just plays with so much energy and so much aggressiveness, and he celebrates after every win. I love it. Like it's I don't know, there's just something energetic about it. So like I said, that's my fangirl moment. I don't have like any deep analysis about it except like he is fun to watch. And so just for fun, and No, it's funny because like I have ADHD, right? And if you know anybody with ADHD, or if you have ADHD yourself, you know a lot of times what gets us stuck is that dopamine release, getting stuck in things that actually just feel good and are fun. So it's like I'm trying to go play by play and take notes and be good and be insightful and be like, yeah, this happened and oh, that's why that happened, yada yada yada. And my brain is like, we could keep doing this, or we could just skip through and watch overshown solo tackle motherfuckers and celebrate afterwards. Yeah, that sounds fun, right? Um, so yes, I've gotten stuck in that loop a couple of times, but I mean, at least I'm analyzing something. Let's see. Ignacio says, I will travel to Pittsburgh for this Sunday night's game. Ooh, dope. That sounds fun. Bucket list road trip with my cousin. Excited. Lastly, any rumors or trades you hearing? Wide receiver 2, pass rusher, RB, Mario Adams. Nothing that seems credible, honestly. Everybody's pretty much talking about the same thing. They're talking about the low price tag on Amari Cooper. They're talking about the fact that Hassan Reddick isn't happy. I think right before I went live on here, somebody was talking about how the Raiders coach liked a tweet that talked about Devontae Adams playing his last game in Vegas. So just that stuff floating around, but nothing that actually seems credible, nothing that actually points to any actual moves being made by the Cowboys. So nothing there. Miss Felony Shredder says, I've been wanting an overshown jersey since he got hurt, but being on disability, I'm afraid to get his jersey. He will change his number. Well, what company is it? Is it American Express? Wait, no. They only refund you if they change teams, not if they change number. I get that. I get that because these jerseys are expensive. I don't even get jerseys right now. I have one Cowboys jersey. It is a Dak Prescott jersey. But like if I were to try to get jerseys for everybody I like, that would be my entire savings. So I've gotten some of the t-shirts. So I have a CeeDee Lamb t-shirt. I have an Ezekiel Elliott 21 t-shirt. And then I have some stuff that just says Cowboys on it. Because you can find those at different companies. Like I got a pullover and a t-shirt from like Fashion Nova that say Cowboys on them. So yeah, I get it. These jerseys are costly, and if you have more than one favorite, or if you think somebody's going to change your number, I can totally understand being like, yeah, I'm gonna hold off on that investment. But yeah, I don't know. Christmas is coming up. Maybe somebody will surprise you. All right. We've been on here for over an hour and 45 and over an hour and 40 minutes. We're approaching an hour and 45. We're not quite there yet. I do appreciate y'all for joining in, for chiming in with your comments and with your questions. As always, like I love interacting with you guys, and I just hope that the audiences continue to grow. Maybe as I become more consistent, the audiences will grow because people will be like, yes, late Monday nights, Jazz is going to be live. Let me tell all my friends, and we'll all tune in on YouTube and watch her. All right. So, on that note, thanks again, everybody, for watching. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn the notifications on so you know next time I go live. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and share it with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. I don't plan on going live tomorrow. And on Wednesday, I'll be on Girls Talk, Boys Talk. And on Thursday, I'll be on Girls Talk, Boys Talk again. And that night, I'll be going live with Brian Broades. So make sure y'all start collecting all your questions about the Cowboys matchup against the Steelers so that when we have Broades on, we have some good topics to talk about. But other than that, it's time for me to have a snack and get to bed. So on that note, thanks for joining once again. This has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jazz Monet, and I'm out.